We're going to ask everyone to please take your seats. We're going to continue with our program. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker this morning. Professor Farrell is the Chief Diversity Officer at Widener University, as well as an Associate Professor of Legal Methods at Widener's Delaware Law School. As the daughter of a master teacher, Professor Farrell says teaching is in her blood, and she considers it one of the most important endeavors in which one can embark. She also believes in giving back by providing support to her students, colleagues, and institution as a whole. Please join me in welcoming to the podium our keynote speaker, Iva Johnson Farrell.
Good morning, everyone. First, let me start by saying I'm doing exactly what I tell my students not to do, and that is bring all of these materials up to the podium. Something's going to get crossed. I'm not going to be looking at the right thing, and so please just bear with me. Technical difficulties, lots of papers, but it's exactly what I tell my students not to do. But again, good morning, and thank you for that wonderful introduction, Cornelia Johnson. I want to thank first and foremost the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for inviting me here to join you today. This is really a wonderful conference, and it's great to see so many faces here today. It really is. I want to thank Victoria Chang for making the initial contact and asking me to come and be the keynote speaker. And I really want to thank your president as well, because for lending his voice here today. I also want to just really applaud Delaware Technical Community College for undertaking this effort and giving us all the time and space to dialogue about these important issues. And I really look forward to your future conferences, and I hope I have the opportunity to come back and attend and bring some friends as well. So really, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for what you're starting. And I'll talk a little bit today about, hopefully, how you can continue to inspire a culture of inclusion. But it really seems like you're really on your way, and you're doing a great job of that so far. So without further ado, I'm going to try to move some of this paper around and see where I'm going and what I'm doing. So if I can see, I'll put my glasses on. All right, so we're going to talk about really diversity for the win. Okay, diversity for the win. Something that I personally believe, and it sounds like many of you here believe that as well, is that when we think about diversity or diversity and inclusion, and equity, whichever of those components, however you want to couch it, when we think about those concepts, we are winning. When we put those concepts in place, we're winning. They yield benefits for us all, and I'll talk about how that is going to play out here and how it works for you. So, the three-legged stool it normally would be, or the three chips. We'll think through these things together today. So, what's diversity? What's diversity? When I was first invited here to speak, Victoria had said to me, you can have an hour to talk. And I said, an hour? An hour? Nobody wants to hear from me for an hour. My students don't want to hear from me for an hour, and our class is longer than an hour, right? My children who love me don't want to hear from me for an hour, right? I don't think I even want to hear from myself for an hour. So an hour, I say, oh my gosh, no, I can't do an hour. I want to come, but an hour, that's just too long. What could they possibly want to hear from me for such a protracted length of time? What could I possibly say that they haven't already said? And I have to tell you, after hearing the president speak a little while ago, I don't think I have any speech left. So I think I should probably cut this down to about 5 minutes. And looking at what's ahead in the agenda, I'm not sure I have much else to say anyway. So I said, but there has to be something I could talk about. There has to be something I could say, or something that you'd want to hear, something that I hope you want to hear. But I didn't want it to just be an everyday, run-of-the-mill, sort of pedestrian kind of discussion about diversity. But what would that entail, though? What would it look like, right? Where would we begin? And so as I thought about it, and I went back and forth, I said, well, we still kind of have to start at the beginning, right? We have to start at the beginning because I had no idea who was going to be in the room, right? I didn't know who my audience was. I knew that Delaware Technical Community College had 3 different campuses. I knew that I was going to be talking to faculty and staff. I knew that there would be employees here. I knew that there was the possibility that there would be community partners, some students, but everyone's sense of the issues, everyone brings their own frame of reference, right? And everyone's entering in at a slightly different point. So let's just think about what that means. So just indulge me for a minute while I take us back to the beginning. So if we think about diversity, a bare bones definition of diversity would be something like, diversity is just the presence of a wide range of variation in quality or attributes, right? That's just bare bones. That's just, I don't know where I thought that up, I don't know where it came from, but you could probably look in an elementary school dictionary and find a definition something like that, right? It's just variation. It's just basic variation, right? So we'll get more formal a little bit later, right? We can think of a more formal one that is more applicable to diversity within the construct that we are thinking about it. So what about inclusion? So as I'll say to my young son, or I'll say to my students, right, because in teaching the law, you're always hoping that someone took Latin, right, or someone paid attention in English, and you say, look at the root, right, what does that mean? Or you'll say to them, no, you can't look at the root on that one. You really need to get your Black's Law Dictionary out because you need to understand what you're reading, right? So we want to understand these terms. But what about inclusion, right? So at its core, inclusion, we really want people to feel included. But inclusion means fully and respectfully involving all individuals in the activities of life of the organization. So here we're talking about your academic institution writ large, but also on all of your campuses. And so from what I've heard about what you were doing this week, it seems, again, that you're on your way, right? You're doing those kinds of things here. So just to round things out, as I said, with the things that as I look at those things now, they sort of look like Tums, right? They look like Tums or Othello pieces or something else, right? So as I look at those things up there now, you think about equity, right? What's equity? So equity, as a lawyer or as a law professor, equity is one of those things that we talk about, just wax on about all the time. Equity just connotes fairness, right? Equity is the easy one, right? It's this concept or idea of fairness. So we don't have to talk a lot about that in terms of coming up with a big definition for it, but that's equity. So I just said a few minutes ago that I wasn't going to be pedestrian, right? But I'm here at the beginning just to set the table, right? Just to get us all at a place where we understand what these things all are. I want to ask you a quick question. I want you to think about it. This isn't really sort of call and response, but I want you to think for a moment. Out of the 3 things that I just defined and the 3 things that are up on the PowerPoint, which of the 3 do you have the most control over? And by you could think of you personally here, or by you can think of you as in Delaware Technical Community College. Maybe it's not one single thing. Maybe it's 2 things. Maybe it's all of those things. But I want you to think about you personally, you Delaware Technical Community College. Which do you have the most control over? So when I was trying to figure out what I was going to talk about, I had to learn a little bit more about you, right? So we do what all good lawyers do, or what all good professors do, or what all good curious people do, right? You go and try to find information. So I wanted to see, what have you been doing with diversity, right? What have you been saying about diversity? Where are you already with diversity? And so I found your college strategic directions, and I saw your strategic plan. And so I saw the language that was very nice language, right? Delaware Technical Community College seeks to foster a culture of inclusion that values, respects, recruits, and retains a diverse college community, right? Nice words, wonderful words, meaningful words. So I've put in red the words that we're really going to focus on for the rest of the time that we're talking here today. and the words that we set the table for with the definition, right? So we have foster a culture of inclusion and diverse college community. So I'm going to start with the latter half. I'm going to start with diverse college community. So what does that mean, right? What does that look like? What does a diverse college community look like? We talked about already what a definition of diversity was, right? What a very basic pedestrian definition of diversity might look like. But maybe we're going to make it just a little more complicated. We'll think about it just a little more in a little more complication. So I'm sure that everyone has seen a slide that looks something like this at some point. Maybe you saw it in a book, maybe you saw it at another presentation. These things come up all the time. I love these iceberg slides. I love them. You see these in the context of diversity and inclusion all the time. You may see them for diversity, you may see them for culture, you may see them for you see them for all kinds of things. But I love them because it is an immediate visual representation of exactly what we're talking about. I'm going to show you a different one in a few minutes. But when you look at this slide, what do you see? What do you see? What do you see when you look at the slide? The majority of it's underwater, right? So we see water, we see an iceberg, we see that the majority of it's underwater. Has anyone ever seen an iceberg? So I had the opportunity to go to Iceland back in March. And so that was my first time really seeing an iceberg. And they're massive, right? So you're driving and you think it's close and it's really not. And it's forever and forever and forever. But what you're looking at is nothing, right? Because it's all underwater. So what you see, you think it's massive above ground, right? But think how much is below the surface. You're only scratching the surface. So what this really represents, as you can see, it says diversity means all the ways we differ, right? It includes the readily visible differences and the underlying differences that may be below the surface. But we focus on what? The things that we can see. We focus on the things that we can see. And the things that we can see are the things that we often let divide us immediately, right? Most readily. So, gender, race, we can see that in the room right now, right? Age, ageism, language barriers, talent, ableism, right? Those sorts of things. But there are other things that you can't see as you can start to see those things down below. So in thinking about that iceberg, I want you to keep that visual in your mind as we go forward about the things that you can see and the things that you can't see. So how do you see the world? How do you see the world? Do you see the world with rose-colored glasses, right? Do you look at the world and only see the good? How many people say that they have rose-colored glasses and they only see the good in the world? Yes? Any takers? Sure. Sure, you want to put your hands up. How many of you would say that you see the world and your glasses may have just a hint of bias on them? That doesn't sound like a nice word, does it? You don't want to call yourself biased. The truth is we all have some bias, and I know, again, this isn't a secret, right? This isn't something that I have created. This isn't something that you haven't heard before. But we've all heard of the concept of implicit bias, right? And we all bring our own biases to the table. The trick is to be aware of them and to not let them interfere, right? And so one of the things, when we'll talk later, one of the things that you need to do, and I heard mention that one of the workshops that the committee is going to be working on is talking about implicit bias, right? And working on that. That's a very important thing. And folks will say, oh, I already know about that. I know all about implicit bias. No, you don't, because the first thing you have to do is look at your own, right? the first thing you need to do is look at your own biases, because those are the ones that you keep tucked away because you're very ready to look at someone else's biases, right? You have to make sure that if you're going to, you talk about these train the trainers, right? Make sure that you're trained and that you've identified the ones that you bring to the table. So I want you to watch this. I should have set it up.
If Roy Moore doesn't remember, how could he say that it's definitively false? And number two, why would he need permission from any of these girls' mothers if they weren't underage?
Sure, that's a good question. And culturally speaking, obviously there's differences. I looked up Allie's background there. Wow, that's awesome that you have got such a diverse background. It's really cool to read through that. But point is this,
what does Allie's background have to do with dating a 14-year-old?
I'm not finished with the context of it.
Well, please answer. What does Allie Velshey's background have to do with dating children, 14-year-old girls?
Sure. In other countries, there's arrangement through parents for what we would refer to as consensual marriage. So
Allie's from Canada.
I understand that. And Allie's also spent time in other countries, of which I've gone to. So it's not a bad thing.
I don't know where you're going with this, Trenton.
Stephanie, to answer, but here's to answer your question. So he said no, comma. So he answered no. And then he went on to say his process would be before he date anybody, whether they're 25, 35, or whether he doesn't know their age, he would ask the mother's permission. So he actually answered no. There's no inconsistency in that. And I stand by the answer. To me, it's the most appropriate, proper answer. When I begin to court my wife.
I have not spent time in Alabama, and that is your community. You have young daughters.
Sure.
If your daughter was 14, would you think it's appropriate that she date a man in his 30s? Would you think it was normal that a random man sign her yearbook?
I would say no. If someone came to me like what was postulated there and said, may I date your daughter, don't know her age, I would say no.
I put this clip in here because the story came to my attention a couple of days ago. I think I was driving home when I heard the story, yet another late night, right? I was driving home when I heard this story, and it hit me. I was just struck dumb, right? I was incredulous at the fact that the gentleman on the right, who happens to be the attorney for Mr. Moore, who's running for Senate, he said that he thought that the man who was on the left, Allie Velshey, should be in tune with the idea that it's okay for someone to ask for permission for a date because perhaps he might know something about child marriage because of his culture, right? He's coming from a diverse background. I read something about your background. It's really neat, were actually the words that he used. So what happened, the background of the story is he looked him up on Wikipedia, and he saw that he was born in Kenya and that he was Muslim. And remember that slide? Remember I said about the things that were above the line, right? He made some what? Assumptions. We do this, right? We make assumptions about people. So those happen to be cultural assumptions. So I may get some traction on my argument here, right? He'll understand because what? I'm going to assume something about an entire culture. Muslims have multiple wives, and please, I don't mean this, I'm using this argument, right? That's a possibility. Or people in other countries, he spent some time in other countries. Other countries, they may not do it in America, but in other countries, that's not above the pale. It's okay, right? He went on to say actually that this isn't different from the culture it's not unusual in the South for people to ask permission to go out on a date. Sure it isn't. It isn't unusual for my 16-year-old to have had to ask someone's parents if they could take them to a movie either. But he was 16, right? So that's a different issue. Tell me what else you saw strange about that clip, beyond the cultural. What else did you see through your non-rose-colored glasses? Sure. And I mean, with respect to the lawyer, so the lawyer looked at, there was a cultural issue, but what else? What else? Right. Right. There was some gender stuff going on there too. I'm not, let me finish what I'm saying here, right? There was some gender, dismiss that. I'm talking over here because he is going to save me, right? Because he's going to agree with my argument. Sure. Something else. Think about those above the line things. No, above the line in terms of diversity issues. Above the line in terms of diversity issues. In the interest of time, I'll just tell you. I'm like him in class. In the interest of time, I'll just tell you. What did that man look like? The one on the left, who's from Canada. He's a brown-skinned individual, right? He's a brown-skinned individual. So we can make some assumptions about him, right? We can make some assumptions about him. Kenya, Muslim, you fit into that culture, so you must have been part of that culture. Let's throw Canada away, right? I didn't have to read that part of your Wikipedia page. That didn't matter, right? I need this part of you. Canada didn't matter. So I just wanted to share that part of you. But that gets me back to talking about community and culture. If you're thinking about diversity and inclusion, and there's that line of visibility. If diversity is the mix, right? Diversity is the mix, right? Who we all here, right? We're a lovely mix in here today. Diversity is the mix. Inclusion is going to be making the mix work. Inclusion is about making the mix work. If I go home, which I'm not, and I say, oh, I'm going to make a cake because my son wants me to make a cake. And I take out eggs, I take out milk, I take out flour. What else do I need? Butter. I think that's it. Some spices maybe, right? Whatever the recipe says, okay? So I take out the stuff for the cake, and I set them all on the counter. Is my cake ready? No. If I take that same stuff out and I dump it into a cake pan, am I going to have a cake when it comes out of the oven at 350 for an hour? No, why not? I need to mix it, right? I need to mix it. So for diversity to work, right, it's not enough just to have diversity, right? People need to feel included, right? Diversity, we're getting into the table. We're getting to the table, right? You're arriving. We're getting people to the station, right, to the train, right? We're starting to go somewhere. Something's happening when you're actually being included, right? When you're actually participating. And so that's what's happening with the inclusion efforts. So that's the work that you have to do. Now, that's not to say that there isn't work that has to be done on the diversity front, right? Because I really think of them together, right? I don't really think that you can separate them. So if you go back to the question about which one do I have more control over, right? Only you can answer that, right? I think they work in concert. I don't think that you can separate it. So how do we create an inclusive environment? How are you going to create an inclusive environment? What are some of the things that you can do to create an inclusive environment? Is that inclusion? If you had a box of crayons, is that inclusion? What do you think? Is that a good representation of inclusion? Box of crayons? Who's ever had one of those 64 boxes of crayons? The one with the sharpener on the back? Anybody have one of those? You know, the kids don't like them the same way anymore. And I'm old up here. I know some of you are young out there, but they don't like them the same way anymore. They want the smelly markers. They want the, the smelly, stuff that you just buy every time you go into the store. But those crayons that you used to sharpen, or you'd peel the paper off, and you put them back into that raggedy box, right? That box would hold those crayons until they started going missing, and then your mother threw them away because they were not where they needed to be, right? So, but think about the crayons. Is that a good metaphor for inclusion? Right? You got crayons of different shapes. Did you say yes or no? I was going to say, it's only good if you're using the crayons. It's only good if you're using them. And that's essentially what this says. Some are pretty, some are dull, others are bright and have real names, but they've all learned to live together in the same box. That is an excellent addition. If you decide, yeah, I'm not going to use that one that's only an inch long, right? I'm not going to use that one anymore because it doesn't have a nice point, right? I don't like the one that's dull, right? Yeah, that's a great point. That is a great point. That's a great point. So let's talk about some of that. How do you get to a culture of inclusion? How do you create a culture of inclusion? And I'm just going to say again, I think my thunder has been stolen. I think we've already talked about this today, but let's talk about it some more, some specifics, before we get to questions a little bit later. So what you need to do in creating a culture of inclusion is to embed an inclusion mindset into your organization. So here, DTCC, right? You've got to embed that mindset into your organization. So what do I mean by that? I think that what I saw on the slide earlier when the first group presented, where you talked about the genesis of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee. Began as one committee, was reconstituted, the charges were changed, decided how it was going to function, was split up into those 3 functional areas. You really took the time to think about how that group was going to be effective, right? Thought about where you wanted to go, set the course, set out to do the work. Really important. Pre-thought, pre-planning, right? I'm going to talk about, or I may as well address this now. Diversity work isn't like you wake up today and tomorrow it's all done. Your president was mentioning earlier about if you're not, I think he said, if you're not angry, right? If you're not outraged, you're not awake, right? Or you're not alive, or if you're not here, right? You're not paying attention, right? You can say that a number of different ways. I don't think that there isn't going to be a need that there won't be a need for this committee anytime soon. I'm confident that you're going to have a lot of work for many years to come, right? I wish that weren't true. I wish we could all be out of those roles, but it's not going to happen with all of the changes that have been happening in our world with such rapidity as of late. So how do we do this? Couple of things. First and foremost, you have to want it. Seems so simple, right? You have to want it, right? You have to want it. You have to want your organization to reflect diversity and inclusion goals. You have to want your culture to be inclusive. But you can't just want it because if I work on diversity, I might get a prestigious award. If I work on diversity, I might get a certain grant. If I work on diversity, someone else might tell me I'm doing a good job. You have to work on diversity because it's the right thing to do. Now, I'm not standing here to preach and be moral, but I go back to the very first slide that I had up that talks about winning with diversity, right? If you do diversity work, if you do inclusion work, if you do equity work for the right reasons, the winning, the recognition, all of those things will come, right? When you looked at some of the preliminary data that came out of the climate discussion, right? The climate study that you were doing, that the most recent climate data. And the answers to the question, the responses were good, right? The one question where the students said that they hadn't had any experiences, that was very high and surprisingly high, right? You thought. But not so, because in reality, from where I sit, people are siloed in their own worlds. And while we think, because we've all come through higher education, that higher education, is a bastion of freedom, and we spend so much time engaging with each other, when people jump into their cars, they go back to their own worlds, right? So that's one place to work on, and I digress a bit. You need also a shift in attitude, and I've already talked about that a bit, and that's just shifting just from diversity for diversity's sake, but diversity, knowing that diversity and inclusion work together. So diversity isn't just about amassing numbers, right? It's not just about, okay, I've got 50% Caucasian students, and I've got 20% African American students, I've got 13% Latino students. I want to somehow get higher representation in this population, and I'd like to get some. It's not about the numbers, right? Not solely, right? Numbers are important, but what happens with the people that represent those numbers when they get here, right? Are they welcome when they get here? Do you have programming for them when they get here? Do they feel welcome in the classroom? Do they see people that look like them when they go into those offices and have customer service issues? Do they have advisors that they can talk to that look like them, right? Do they have peer groups? Do they have organizations? Are there things that service them? And lots of these things sound like what? Common sense. They sound like things like, I cannot believe she's standing here telling me this. I already know it, right? But these are the kinds of things that you think through and you'd come to it, but they're things that are important to students. And so it may not always come through in the data. It may not even come through in focus groups, but those are the kinds of things that when you talk and when you work through this, you start to see that that's some of the stuff that's missing, okay? Training, I talked about this, is not enough. Another thing in an inclusive community that goes without saying is that everyone is valued equally, right? Again, a no-brainer. How does that display itself? Now, at this university, at this college, Delaware Technical Community College has lots of different options for the students, right? So lots of different disciplines. Students have options to study all kinds of things. Are there disparities in funding? Right? Do students seem to be funneled into one area versus another? Probably less of an issue at a 2-year school than it may sometimes be at a 4-year school. What happens with advising? But you want to keep an eye on those sorts of things as well. Do they have access to the classes that they need, right? Do they have access to the same sorts of grants or funding or other things that they need here, right? Something else to think about. I haven't even touched on the hiring, okay? The hiring, which the president mentioned as well, okay? One of the things, and I can talk about that actually when we talk, so I'll save it. I'll talk a little bit about one of the initiatives that I'm working on. I'll mention it now so we can stick a pin in it, but it's called the Diversity Advocates Program, and that centers around the hiring efforts that I'm working on at Weidner to try to diversify our faculty and ultimately staff. Let's see, what else? What else can I tell you? Here's my time? Let me wait, okay. I'm over my time, let me see. So, have to want it. Safe space, you mentioned safe space. I would have been talking about that. In thinking about what it looks like, right? An inclusive community is where everyone's valued, as I said, everyone is expected, and people can be themselves. Not like 60s, right? Free to be, you guys aren't old enough for that, free to be you and me, kind of be yourself, but people need to feel safe, right? That's really where diversity and inclusion work leads us now. There needs to be safety at the university, right, at the college. And so the safe space training that you do here is certainly something that we also do at Widener. I applaud you for that. That's very important, very, very important work as well. Conscious programming. One more thing that I would talk about, just to put a pin in that. You mentioned, and it was on your slide, that you hadn't thought about so much about the older student. Even though the average age of your student, I think you said 25 or 26, right? That's a student, that's a group that wants to be fully integrated into the university, right? And so that brings back the notion of what does diversity look like here at Delaware Technical Community College, right? Your notion of diversity is not identical to the notion of diversity at Delaware State right down the street, right? Not exactly the same as diversity at Widener, right? Slightly different. So thinking about the older student, that is someone that you're thinking of, right? When you're thinking of, you may be thinking of when you're thinking about your students. So let me see what else I can cut out here, because I'm talking too long. So I guess I'll move along and say this. Look at this slide. What don't you see up here? Can you guys see that? What don't you see up here? So there's a lot of words, different colors, strengths, diversity, inclusiveness, quality, wise, gender, a lot of stuff. You don't see love, okay. I don't see respect. Who said that? You don't see an iceberg. No, this was actually just meant to be just a graphic of words. It's just a diverse, these are words that just fit with diversity. It's meant to, I was hoping that it would evoke something. Understanding. So it's not really that there's a word that's missing. What do these words symbolize, I guess, was a better way to ask that question. Are they positive or are they negative? They're positive, right? They're net positive. Is there anything negative up here? Right? No, right? These are all things that fit in the framework of diversity, right? They're all things that fit in. So esteemed. So yeah, I think we didn't see understanding, but we've got bridges, right? Bringing people together. That would connote a sense of understanding, unite, inclusion. I guess what I want together, right? I guess what I want you to see is you don't see the negatives. And I don't want to sound Pollyanna, right? Like this is perfect and utopia, because again, diversity work is, one step forward, 3 steps back, right? Maybe not that bad. What I want you to see is that you don't see the negatives. What I hope you do see there is the potential for winning, right? The potential for gains, the potential to yield and reap benefits in your organization when you focus on diversity and inclusion. When you focus on diversity and inclusion, the possibility of reaping some of that for your organization. So, since I was not watching time and didn't have a little timer, and I'm sorry, I could talk all day long, and that's bad. So maybe I should have taken Victoria up on an hour. But when you're talking about embedding your culture of inclusion, here's what you need to do. Be committed. You are already. Be transparent. Let folks know what you're doing. I saw a note up there about advertise. That is something I'll tell you that I'm constantly saying about, not necessarily for us, I talk about, I didn't know this was happening, or I didn't know that was happening, about other things that are going on. Folks want to know. Back to the point about inclusion, and I think it goes to sometimes with older students and maybe even with the response rate, how folks get their information sometimes is affected by who they are, right? And so we have to be mindful of those students and their needs as well. Be willing to collaborate. I don't see any issues with that here, right? I think the fact that you are a multi-campus college forces you to be nimble in that area. Be willing to work, again, check. Be willing to share, really important. Share among yourselves, share with the community and community partners, share with other organizations, other colleges, share. Be willing to ask questions, right? I'm gonna, you have questions about something, it never hurts to ask, right? Asking is free. Be willing to make mistakes because you will make them, right? This didn't work, okay, great. What did I learn from it? Lessons learned, do a postmortem, figure it out, and be willing to keep trying, because that's the most important thing, is that you get up and you do it again, okay? And you keep trying. So with that, I'm going to close, and I'm going to say thank you again for having me here, and I guess I'm going to transition myself to this couch, but thank you very much.
Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you so very much. Thank you for the wonderful, wonderful keynote address. At this time, we're going to transition, and I have a few questions that I'm going to ask our speaker on today, and so I'm going to ask that you would join me.
I will join you. And I hope I didn't eat up all of the time, so if I did, I apologize.
Oh, you are fine. You are fine. All is well. Thank you again for sharing some time with us and talking with us about diversity. I have just a few questions that I would like to bring to your attention, and perhaps you can provide some insight. Number one, what are some challenges that you experience trying to cultivate a diverse and inclusive environment within your college community, and how did you overcome these challenges?
So I would say, first and foremost, one of the biggest challenges in trying to cultivate a community is having willing participants. That is one of the biggest challenges. And that goes back to what I was saying, and I'm going to turn away from you just a second so I don't excuse my back. And that is one of the things when I said to you earlier about you having a gift in having an ally, it is crucially important to have your administration be on board, your faculty be on board, your community be on board. You cannot underestimate the importance of that. Now, our college, our university president is an ally and is on board with diversity initiatives, and so are many of the faculty. But when you are thinking about these things, when there's a very strong faculty governance tradition at our university, and so sometimes things can, and this is not to blame faculty, so just let me make sure, in case this is being recorded, that be clear, because I'm faculty too. But there can be bureaucracy at times, right? And so you want to try to streamline that as much as possible. But you also don't want a situation where there are so many hands in something that it can stop the progress. So I think that to the extent you can have things funneled into a central place, right? So for example, as a chief diversity officer, it would be wonderful if everything was funneled through my office and I knew about all diversity initiatives. When the position was first created, it wasn't like that. And that's not to stop the flow of organic things happening outside of me, because I don't need to know I don't need to control what's going on, but you don't want duplication of effort if there's a way to have some natural synergies between things. I really like what I saw for this particular committee and how, you seem to streamline. This group is going to handle this group is going to handle that, and then you come together as the entire committee to here's how this worked, here's how this didn't work, now you're going to move on to this part of it. It just really streamlines to ensure that you can have as much done as possible. So I think that ensuring that you have willing participants, and I wish I'd left that slide up with the B's, really important to have workers, really important to have believers, and then also not just people who give lip service, right? And that goes back to my point about believing and wanting to do for the sake of good, not just because it's going to give you a fancy, some fancy accolade, get you a plaque, get you recognized, get you a grant. Or get you your next job, right?
Wow. Thank you so very much for that, Professor Farrell. One of our goals as a college is not only to be culturally competent, but also to be culturally proficient, in that faculty can strengthen the preparation of students to work in diverse cultural settings. Can you provide any recommendations toward how the college can support our faculty in achieving this goal?
Yes. And so I said before, it's not all about the training. No, this is training, training, training. So here, I don't know what the faculty development tradition is here, but that is, I don't want to say easy, but that is an easy and not so terribly costly vehicle for introducing some of that here at the college. So faculty development is a good place to set up a series of workshops for competency trainings and those sorts of things. And you can do it over a series of, you can do sort of lunch and learns with them so that it's not overwhelming. I joked about time and folks not wanting to, to hear me speak for an hour, even though you heard me speak for too long, I think. You could have, a 6-week series. You could have, an hour, bring your lunch, maybe the college picks up lunch, whatever it is. If there is a time that you have that's dedicated to that sort of thing, that's a nice time to do it. If it's possible to do a retreat, that's also another nice time to do it. People can, relax into that and take care of those. So I'm a big fan of doing it in those types of venues. If you can swing a retreat, the retreat is even better. If your faculty is amenable to giving up, a Saturday or giving up, whatever day, if it's during the time that the school is closed, I think that's important. But it's really important. Like I was sort of made a small joke about starting at the beginning with the vocabulary. Really important, because this is another place where the language is changing, right? Daily. There's so much to keep up with. And sometimes I say to, even people that I work with, I feel like I'm learning something new every day. And sometimes I even wonder, am I still saying the right thing? Am I using, because you don't want to be offensive, but again, back to the other slide, you will make mistakes. Right? So you have to be able to not take yourself so seriously that if I use this word but not that word, my heart was in the right place and I meant no offense. So you have to just, keep pressing forward.
Wow, thank you so very much. Great insight. Widener University received the Higher Education Excellence in Diversity. This is the HEAT Award in 2016. Can you share with us the university's journey and highlight signature programs and activities that cultivate an environment of diversity and inclusion?
Okay, so first, let me say, the HEAT Award is a wonderful, 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 wonderful award, and it was a great honor to receive the HEAT Award, and I absolutely love I got to meet the publishers of Insight magazine last year, well, it was this year, back in March when we went down. It is a wonderful, it is a lot of work putting together that application. But here's what I will say about the HEAT Award application and the HEAT Award generally. This school should apply for it next year. If you did not apply for it this year, you should absolutely apply for it next year. You have a story to tell, and you have so much to show in terms of what you're doing. You are right on track to provide the kind of information and to be in the running. And I know I'm not quite answering specifically what you said, but I want to address this. There are some great two-year colleges out there that I met some of the folks from who won the award last year. The reason I'm saying this is because the application changes annually, okay? And so part of that is what they said to me is it gets harder every year. Okay, every year it gets harder because every year they're going to different schools and they go and meet people and they change the questions every year. So it's not like you win, dust off your application and start again and just say, hey, here's what we did. But one of the reasons that one of the things about the HEAT Award application is that it allows you the opportunity to really do an incredible self-assessment, to look inward and say, here's what we're doing well, here's what we're not. So your question about signature programs was, so at that time, we're looking at, so it talked, I think, is your last question about student stuff?
It's about the being able to cultivate an environment of diversity and inclusion.
Okay. So one of the things in the HEAT Award application that we talked about was Widener has a program, well, they had a pluralism campaign called We're All Weidner. And so this campaign is really designed to begin the discussions and begin imprinting on the university and imprinting on the students the notion that we're all one, right? And so it's carried through materials. It's not well represented, but it's on the website. Really, again, not well on the website, but it's on the website. And there was programming around that We're All Weidner campaign. And so also the safe space training was a very big deal for us in describing that. And that was, you all know about the safe space training, but that was one of the programs that they were really impressed with at the time because it spoke to our vision for ensuring that we were allied with the community and keeping our LGBTQ community members safe and secure there at school. But there's mentoring program that is out of the Office of Multicultural Affairs that was done for our students. This year, on the application, we actually did not receive the HEAT Award for 2017. We got the honorable mention. And so that was good and bad news. It was good news because they said they created the category with us in mind because we were a hair's breadth away from receiving the award. So I was very sad. But it was really a good thing because, again, we got to see lots of things. One of the things that our focus this year is on going forward, again, is really focusing on retention, which I know is one of the things that you're focusing on as well. But going forward, our signature program will be this diversity advocates piece that I didn't talk about there that I would be happy to talk to you about at a later time.
Okay. Last question. Can you share how Widener students have been empowered to help create an environment of diversity and inclusiveness?
So 2 things. 1, the We're All Widener program. 2, also we have a new program that is out now that the president actually, we just did an event at the president and the dean of my law school just did an event at the Constitution Center in Philadelphia, and it's called Common Ground. So that's a new initiative that is going on, and it's really looking for common ground, right? Essentially showing we're not that far off, right? Having people engage, the novel concept of having people actually engage in dialogue. And if you talk to someone, right, you might find out that you thought you were this far apart, but in fact, you're really only this far apart. So some of the things that we'll be working on are coming up with additional events centered around that. But that initiative was actually started by our president, Julie Woolman, and the Constitution Center. So that was a really good event.
Wow, thank you so much, Professor Farrell. Let's give Professor Farrell another round of applause. She has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate all of the time that you spend in preparing for us and the great information that you shared with our college. We are the better as a result of that.
Well, thank you.
Again, another round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.